Good morning, hi, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to bring you a video discussing the topic of showing and not telling in your fiction. And the art of showing, not telling, while it's easy to throw that statement around, it actually can be quite difficult to master. So I just wanted to talk about that and give you some tips that will help you to understand what it actually means. I remember back in the early 2000s, I was a member of a writing forum, which was fantastic, and every month we would post a chapter of our work in progress and get a critique from other authors. And one of the things I often saw thrown around, even on my own stuff, was you need to show, not tell. And while I thought I understood it at the time, because showing and not telling is kind of an easy thing to understand, I didn't really, and it was something I had to learn. And there wasn't the YouTube around back then where you could just put it in and learn it. It was something I had to read about and figure out myself, and so it's taken a lot. So I just want to come and explain it to you, and hopefully in a way that you will understand, so that you can use it in your fiction. One of the best tips that stuck with me, and I cannot even remember where I got this from, was if your character is thinking, doing or acting something, then you probably have showing in your fiction. However, if you, the author, are butting in and explaining something to the reader, you are probably telling. And it's Chuck Palahniuk, I'm not sure how you pronounce his surname, I'm probably completely butchering it. And he says, if your character is to know something, you must present the details for your reader to also know the thing. Or, if your character wants something, you must describe the thing so that the reader also wants it too. And those are, I love how they explain exactly what it is, but I want to dive into some more details. I'm going to give you 11 tips to help understand how to show, not tell in your story. Before I jump into that though, I want to talk about what showing, not telling means on the very basic level. And to understand the difference between the two, if we are stating the facts about something, we are telling the reader something. But if we want to show the reader what is happening, we must create a scene that allows the reader to infer the facts and emotions. So let me jump into those tips. Number one, use descriptive action. So what I mean by this is we can make statements about the characters. Bob was nervous or Sarah was tired. But that is just me telling you those facts, and it doesn't mean you'll necessarily feel those things. I need to use descriptive action that would allow you to actually experience Bob's nerves alongside him and hopefully feel a little bit nervous, or to completely understand Sarah's tiredness. And while I can't actually make you feel tired, but you could resonate with the feelings of being tired. We can also do this when we are talking about how a character is as a person, because we make them up with personality traits. So you might have a character who you want to portray as somebody who does not like conflicts or arguments, and you could simply have a character faced with a moment when they're going to argue and they put their hands up, go, I don't like arguments, and walk off. That is more telling. What you would actually do is, through the story, is show evidence through the character's action that they don't like arguments. So, for example, if they were confronted with a situation that was going to cause some conflict, they would, say somebody's trying to argue with them, they would just go, yeah, sure, that's cool, shrug their shoulders, walk away. You would be showing that they're not an argumentative person. Or likewise, if they had a situation where their opinion was requested but they knew the character they were talking to was going to be an argumentative person, they would just bite their tongue, not speak about their own opinion, and just kind of agree to save the peace. And those are the kind of things you would show through your descriptive action. But jumping back to Bob and Sarah, if, say, Bob was nervous, we want to show he's nervous, he's got to go and give a speech, a room full of people. We can all imagine that. Some people don't care, and some people die when they've got to do something like that. So we could simply say Bob was nervous about giving his presentation. It's fine, it conveys exactly what we want to say, but we're explaining. Instead, what we could write was, Bob's hands trembled as he shuffled his note cards. He took a deep breath and then another, willing his racing heart to slow down as he approached the podium. So none of that have I said that he's nervous about his speech. I have literally shown it with his body language, and the fact that he's going to the podium shows he's giving a speech. Number two, use the five senses. Most of us will use sight. We need to engage the five senses. So we have sight, hear, feel, taste and smell. And we do often use them. I tend to lean more towards the see side, which I think a lot of authors do. Sorry, not see, sight part of that, but we can invoke all of those senses and give the reader a really good sensory experience of a description. So for example, it was a beautiful spring day. It's a fact, that's the author explaining. Instead, we could bring the senses in to explain how it is a beautiful spring day. So we could have to show sunlight warmed her face as she walked, the sweet scent of blooming cherry blossoms filling the air, the gentle breeze carried a melodic chirping of robins, heralding the arrival of spring. We all know what sunlight feels on our face when it warms our skin. We know the smell of cherry blossoms in the air. We know we can feel that kind of day when it is warm and you can smell the flowers as you are walking along, and we know that means spring. Number 3, use dialogue to reveal character. Dialogue can be such a powerful tool. What they do and don't say can reveal so much about them. It is like when we speak to each other, we get certain impressions from the way a person talks, from what we say, and the words that we use. We can use positive words, negative words. We as people can infer a lot from each other about our personalities and our emotions in the way we speak to each other. And the same goes for your characters. You can use dialogue to convey so much, not just with the character going, I feel angry today, but the words they use. So they would shout. So for example, one of your characters could, you could say, one character to another could say, you've made me feel angry. And I know that's a character talking, but they are still stating their facts and explaining. Whereas if you had a character that says, just get out of the room, I don't want to speak to you anymore, would infer their emotion in the dialogue. And I probably think dialogue is one of the easiest ways to use showing rather than telling, because we all do it so naturally on a day-to-day basis. And for example, we have Bob and Sarah. Again, I don't know why I like those names, I just do. But Bob and Sarah don't get along. The author could write that in their description. Bob and Sarah didn't like each other. However, we could show that in our description by making them have some conflict. So, nice shirt, Bob said. Did your mum pick that out for you? Sarah's eyes narrowed. At least I have someone who cares about me. For me, dialogue is probably one of the easiest ways to show and not tell, because we can so easily pick words to say to somebody that would convey exactly how we are feeling, rather than saying how we're feeling. And your characters can do exactly the same. Number 4, show through internal feelings and thoughts. While it's important to show your character's external world, don't forget to show their internal worlds, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. These can be shown through internal monologues, physical sensations, and their reactions. An example of this is Emma was conflicted about her decisions. And that would be telling. So to show, Emma's stomach churned as she stared at the 2 envelopes in front of her. Harvard or Stanford. The choice that had once filled her with excitement now left a bitter taste in her mouth. She reached for one and then pulled her hand back, the weight of her future pressing down on her shoulders. So we know, without being told, that she's conflicted which college she has to go for, because this is a big decision in her life. She's picking a college for her future. There's a lot on that. And if we were just to simply say that Emma didn't know what to choose between Harvard and Stanford because she didn't want to make the wrong decision for her future, it loses the emotional connection that the reader will have with Emma. We need to also feel how important that decision is. So we can show that by having her nervousness at the envelopes and reading the letter of her acceptance and stuff like that. Number 5, use specific details. Specific concrete details are more effective at creating vivid images than general statements, and these allow readers to form clear images in their minds. So what I mean by this, and an example of this, is the old house was in bad shape. But if we wanted to show that to the reader, we could say paint peeled from the weathered clapboards in long unfurling strips. The porch sagged precariously, its floorboards warped and splintered. Weeds choked the overgrown garden, their tendrils creeping up the cracked foundation. Do you see the difference in using the details, especially more concrete words. I always remember this one is something I read years ago, and I think it was Holly Lyle talked about it, that when you are taking the reader into a place, you are putting something in front of them, and the way you want to have them feel about it is the details that you will pick out. So standing in front of the house, I want the reader to know that the house is in bad shape. So I am purposely picking out the things to point to the reader to show it's in bad shape, like the peeling paint, like the floorboards, like the weeds growing. If I was trying to sell this to somebody, I would use different language, whereas I was showing the house had potential. It's got, you know, a big porch, it's got all this ground. So it depends on your goal in describing the thing with the language that you would use and the details you would pick out. But you need to use the more concrete words to give it a real feel of what you're trying to describe with the details. Number 6, show change over time. So in your story you might have something that's changed. So instead of saying something changed over time, have in your story, and it could be a series of scenes that shows the process of the change. So for telling, for example, we could have, over the years, the town became a bustling city. However, for showing, there's 2 ways. We could, if it depends on how you were doing. So maybe you're talking about the city, the town going to a city, and so you just want a brief statement about it, or throughout your story, you want to show the town changing it into a city. So if it was just simply a paragraph talking about what the town used to be like, we would use something like, where corn once swayed in the breeze, skyscrapers now pierced the sky. Quiet country roads Jake remembered from his childhood had transformed into 6-lane highways, constantly humming with traffic. Even old Miller's general store had now been replaced by a gleaming new shopping mall. So that could be a description. However, if you were wanting to show this throughout your story, those kind of details you would keep just popping in as the story went along. But on this one, we can see kind of Jake's perspective that the town that he once loved had just been replaced with all these modern things and had now become a city. Number 7, avoid using excessive adverbs. So I know there's a whole video on the use of adverbs, and I think it's Stephen King said that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. Well, this is one good reason to kind of not all avoid them because they are handy, but just watch where they are, because when you are using adverbs, you are most often telling rather than you're showing. So what I would say, where you can, try to, instead of using adverbs, use stronger verbs to describe what you're wanting to convey to the reader, and that would be a definite way to reduce the level of telling and turn it more into a showing paragraph. For example, Sarah walked quickly to the shop. We could change that to Sarah hurried to the shop. And there are other words we could take out of our prose that gets rid of the telling and the showing, and these are things like feel, think, knows, realizes, notices, understands, believes, imagines. These are all the kind of words that if you find these in your book manuscript when you're editing or writing, just check if you're telling in these areas, because these are kind of like keywords. My crutch word is looks. My characters look a lot and they know things a lot. So these are words I have to go and try and cut out, because they are usually, if I search these, they will usually be the places that I am showing rather than telling in my story. They are usually the places where I'm telling rather than showing in my story. Number 7, show your character's emotions through physical reaction. People generally feel emotions through a physical sensation. If you are afraid or angry, you don't just think, wow, I'm afraid, or wow, I'm angry. No, you actually feel it. It has a sensation in your body. If I was to ask you how anger felt, you would probably be able to tell me some things that you feel in your body, and the same goes for your characters. So we need to put those things into the character's actions or the sensations in their body, the internal monologue, anything that would put over what the character is feeling about something. So for example, with telling, we would have Bob was terrified of that speech, but Bob was terrified. And again, we need to show Bob is terrified. So Bob's heart pounded against his ribs. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. This is putting the physicality on his terror, because he might be terrified of giving those speeches. So you imagine giving a speech, what kind of things would you be feeling? So yes, earlier we had his trembling hands, but on his physical reaction we would have his heart racing. Number 9, use metaphors and similes, but don't overdo these. Well used metaphors and similes can show complex ideas and emotions in a concise and vivid way. Like I said, use them sparingly, because if you overdo it, your book and manuscript can become really flowery. And when I've edited some things for people, this is one of the things I see people do. They use metaphors until it's just metaphor, and you're like, what? Stop it. So this is a good one, but don't do it very often. So for example, an idea of telling would be, the city was busy and overwhelming. But to convey that through a simile or a metaphor, we could change that for showing to, the city was a beehive, the inhabitants swarming through the streets, a constant dizzying dance. It's a good description and a good simile, but just don't do that all the time. Number 10, make sure to balance your showing versus your telling. Because I know showing and telling is one of those things that we tell authors all the time to do, but you don't always have to show everything. There are moments that telling is exactly what you need, because we don't need that level of detail. Showing every single detail in your story can often just be completely unnecessary. It can make it long, and this is when you would get comments of readers that would say it's boring and it's dragging, because there are just some things we don't actually need to show the readers. We are just telling them is simple enough. Try and use telling for the less important details, or if you're just trying to vary your pacing. Lastly, tip number 11 is practice. This is the thing I say about anything, and I'm sorry about the noise. The neighbour has decided to have some workmen, so if you can hear that, they are drilling something outside, as Sot's law. But anyway, so what I was saying is practice. I say this with everything. Anything you want to do, you need to practice. We need to get better. Practice on things. It doesn't matter if it's not in your works in progress. Just do a couple of practice exercises to describe that noise outside. So mastering show, not telling, takes time and practice. As you write, be conscious of where you are telling instead of showing. During revision, look for opportunities where you can convert your telling into showing, especially if you've got any key emotional moments in your scenes. They're probably good ones that you could turn into showing if you are just telling, you know, like anger, happiness and all those. You could probably convert those into a showing scene, but have some practice. Just go and make a scene up. You know, a character goes to a restaurant, gets the wrong meal. Practice over show just for your own practice. And the more you do this, the easier it gets. Showing, not telling is such a powerful technique that can transform your writing, making it more engaging for the readers, making it vivid and making it just resonate. By using descriptive action, sensory detail, dialogue, internal thoughts and specific details, you can create scenes that allow readers to experience the story alongside your characters, and that is really the goal of our story. We want to put our readers into the story with the characters. We want them side by side, experiencing, feeling, knowing, going through everything our characters go through. Remember though, the goal is not to eliminate telling from your story, but to find the right balance of showing and telling. Showing is most effective in those important moments in character development and setting scene. Telling is useful when we need to just summarize the less crucial bits of information or transitioning through a scene. As you practice these techniques, you will develop an instinct of when to show and not tell. It will kind of just come naturally to you, but it will make your writing become more immersive, your characters more real, and your stories more compelling. So keep writing, keep revising, and keep showing the readers the rich, vibrant world of your imagination. I hope that helped. I'm really sorry about the noise that's just come up. It seems the neighbours are going to point to their house, and I've decided to as I'm recording this. But I hoped this video helped you to understand showing, not telling, and give you some tips on how to bring showing more into your writing. If you have any questions, pop them down below and I'll try and answer them for you. But in the meantime, don't forget to give this video a good like, subscribe and smash that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. As I've said before, I do have a small little writers group. I will put a link down below if you want to join it, so you can come along and chat to me in there. I also have a resource library with things where you can get like character worksheets, and I have my Preptober workbooks for NaNoWriMo, things like that. When they come up, I update it all the time. Feel free to come and pop your name into my mailing list and you will get access to that. But for now, I am going to head off, going to get something to eat because I'm starving, and I hope this video was helpful for you.